To the education team's first webinar in conjunction with the Inspiring Governance Programme. I'm Lynn, the Operations Manager of the Education Programme at the Institution of Mechanical Engineers. I oversee our Student Challenge portfolio and coordinate the institution's educational outreach work. As part of the government's Take a Closer Look campaign, which seeks to encourage more young people to consider engineering careers, the IMechE is actively encouraging its members to become school governors and trustees. As part of this, in 2020, the IMechE came on board as a school governor champion and has been promoting the work of the Inspiring Government's recruitment service. Today, we are here to discuss how to develop your career while helping to shape the future of local schools and how to become a school governor. Our panelists include Lynn King and Dominic Judge from Education and Employers, who will tell us about the benefits of governorship, how the Inspiring Governance recruitment service works, how it can benefit your career whilst helping the next generation, and how you can get involved remotely to make meaningful impact during COVID and of course thereafter. Afterwards, we will hear from Alex Bond and Malcolm Dobell, who are two active IMechE members who have been involved in governorship for some time. Alex and Malcolm will provide a personal perspective on governorship and share their experiences and achievements with you. We will then open the floor to questions, and I invite you to ask questions in the chat box facility. You're welcome to ask questions throughout the webinar, and we will look to answer them following the presentations at approximately 12:40. This is not a pre-recorded webinar, and we are here to engage with you, so please do use the opportunity to ask us anything that may be of interest. A recording of this webinar will be distributed to all registrants and put on the dedicated Inspiring Governance webpage on the IMechE website. So please do feel free to revisit this material or to share it further afield. To get started, I would like to introduce Dominic Judge and Lynn King.
Great, thank you, Yelena. You referred to us as Inspiring Government, which I wasn't quite sure how inspiring it is at the moment in terms of the challenges around COVID, but we're from Inspiring Governance. My name is Dominic Judge. I am the Director of Governance Programs for a charity called Education Employers, and we run the DFE funded education, the Inspiring Governance service, recruiting volunteers to place in schools and colleges. Natalie, I don't know whether we can have the slides. Thank you very much. If you can move on to the first slide, the next slide. Thanks. I'm reliably informed that engineers like a concrete stat on a whole range of things. So I thought I'd just give an overall introduction to why school governance and academy trusteeship is so important at the moment. Back in the autumn, we hosted the launch of the OECD's report on education called Education at a Glance. They look at all the most developed education economies across the world. And three things struck me from that report that resonated really with just how important governing in schools is at the moment. As a country, we invest the fourth highest percentage of our GDP into education. So billions of pounds of taxpayers' money goes into educating our children. We are one of the most autonomous education systems in the world. So our schools have more freedoms than perhaps any other schools. We are not heavily locally or politically managed in terms of our schools. And the UK has highest ratio of between head teacher pay and teacher pay in the system. And that is a recipe for innovation, good autonomy, but without a significant dollop of strong governance where there is oversight of the finances, it's potentially a recipe for disaster. So you are considering school governance at a really good time as well. So our report that we published a year ago, looking at a decade-long change in school governance, showed that governing boards now are much clearer about their clarity of purpose. They are smaller and tighter and more skill-based, about 10 to 12 people. And there is much better advice and guidance for governors out there. So you are considering becoming a governor or trustee at a really good time. What we did find, though, that the diversity of governing boards has not changed significantly over the last 10 years. And I'll say a bit more about that after Lynn has taken you through what the role is and what its strategic function is. So next slide, Natalie, and over to Lynn.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Lynn King, and I'm head of governance programs for Inspiring Governance. And just the next few slides, I'm going to talk to you about the role of a governor, inspiring governance, and how it works. So school governors, as you'll see from this slide, they work alongside the head teacher and senior leadership team. It's a strategic role rather than an operational one, and they are the three core functions that are detailed in the Department for Education's governance handbook. So firstly, to agree the long-term strategy for ensuring compliance of the school's clarity of vision, its ethos and its culture. Holding the executive and senior leaders to account for the conduct and the educational performance of the school and of its pupils, and to oversee the financial performance of the school and agree the budget and the staffing structure that's required to deliver the strategy, so ensuring that money is well spent. Next slide, please. So Inspiring Governance is an online governor recruitment platform. It's funded by the Department for Education, and its aim is to diversify school governing boards so that they're representative of the communities that they serve. And we do that by connecting professional volunteers like yourselves with schools throughout England. We work alongside employers and professional membership associations to encourage and support members and employees to join governing boards. As Yelena mentioned, the Institution of Mechanical Engineers became a partner with us last summer, and since then there's been a noticeable increase in the number of engineers who are registering with us to become a governor. Which is good because it's estimated that there's at least one vacancy on every school governing board in England. So that would be approximately 25,000 vacancies at any one time. And this is spread across all regions up and down England. And throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, school governing boards have continued to meet, albeit remotely, and have played a very important role in ensuring schools have been able to remain a safe environment for young people. Next slide, please, Natalie. So how does it work? Well, as a volunteer, you would register your details and skills, and likewise, our schools and academies register their vacancies. So we use a local mapping technology, which you can see from that image on the map there. And it can be based on either your home and or your work postcode. So you're able to accurately search for vacancies that are specific to your geographic preferences. So for example, you could choose to consider schools within, say, a 3-mile radius of your home, or the entire area between your home and your normal place of work. London is, as you'd expect, an area where schools have the biggest pool of volunteers, to choose from. So if you do live and work in London, it is perhaps worth considering widening your search a little into neighbouring boroughs. The portal itself is powered by Salesforce, and the search function powered by Ordnance Survey technology, which provides the postcode specific searching that I've just mentioned. It is easy to use, but if you do require some help, we do have a small team who can support you to register to use the portal. And both volunteers and schools can search for suitable matches. It's very much a two-way system. So you can either register your details and then sit back and wait for a school to send you an invitation to discuss their vacancy, or you can be proactive and search for vacancies that schools have added to the portal and send an expression of interest to start a conversation. When you register, it is important to include a paragraph or two about your key skills and your experience, along with what's motivated you to want to become a governor. as this forms your profile, and it's your profile that schools will see when they're searching for volunteers on the portal. And as Yelena said, now is a really good time to register your interest, as outlined in the newly launched Value of Volunteering report, which I believe Dom will allude to a little later on. Volunteers have stated that they know what they do makes a difference. Over 99% of volunteers describe impacts for young people, and 94% felt they gained a better understanding of society and social issues. Over to you, Dom.
Next slide, please, Natalie. I talked earlier about the need to diversify school governance, and Lynn has mentioned it. It's part of the remit of our service. The reason for that being, we estimate from the National Governance Association survey that about 6% of governors are from a Black, Asian or minority ethnic background. And we know that the figure for senior leaders in terms of head teachers in schools, HTs, head teachers, 3% of those are from a Black, Asian or minority ethnic background, and about 7% of teachers are from a Black, Asian and minority ethnic background. And if you look at that against what is a primary school population of about a third of pupils now coming from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds, that you can see the fundamental disproportion there between those making decisions about schools and education and those receiving education. So it's really important that we work hard to broaden governing boards in terms of a diversity of thought and challenge around that role. And that's because governors have a strategic role on race. As a governor, you'll be looking at the pupil attainment of different census groups in the category by GCSE or A-level or by SAT. You'll be monitoring exclusions to ensure that they are not overrepresentative for one particular ethnic group. You'll be looking at racist incidents in schools, the way the broad and balanced curriculum is set up in terms of whether it's engaging all learners in your schools, and looking at the destination data to make sure that people are not overrepresented not in education, employment or training. And a lot of reports over the years have looked at this, not just for the health service, the police, but also in education about some of those disparities. And we're expecting the Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities that Boris Johnson set up in the summer after the Black Lives Matters movement to report on disparities in education. There will be some things that will need to be implemented from that. Over 2 years ago, we set up a joint campaign with the National Governance Association called Everyone on Board. And we've been working with partners like Operation Black Vote, the Black Young Professionals Network, local race equality councils. I believe we've had contact with the Association for Black and Minority Ethnic Engineers, so AFBE. And we're doing quite well. About 18% of our volunteers are from a Black, Asian, minority ethnic background, and about 20% of our matches. There's no kind of bias operating in the system there in terms of matches. And there are seeds of hope. So that very same NGA survey that I talked about at the start of the slide shows that 9% of newly appointed governors over the last 2 years are from an ethnic minority. So we are making the changes to having more represented governing boards. But why engineers? Next slide, please, Natalie, and over to you, Lynn.
Yeah, so you're going to hear shortly from two IMechE members, Alex and Malcolm, who I'm sure will be able to give you some personal perspective around what they give and gain from being governor. The bullet points on the slide are really purely a snapshot overview. As a school governor, you'll be a role model for children thinking about their future in the workplace. And in my experience, at least, I'd say engineers have a typically natural curiosity, are innovative and have an analytical approach. And so coupled with a problem-solving mindset, this provides a wealth of skills to a governing board. And being a critical friend is a term that's often used to describe governance. So asking meaningful questions and seeking those answers. So an example of this being when you're presented with a head teacher's report or a school improvement plan, it's the ability to challenge the data and to look for the evidence rather than simply accepting what you see at face value. And as a school governor, it's a strategic role. Therefore, strategic leadership, project and risk management skills are all extremely valuable to a governing board, particularly within things like the finance and strategic committees, where governors are actively involved in overseeing and approving aspects of the budget and the curriculum. And then being collaborative and working as part of a team is key. And I think it's very important to acknowledge that a governing board makes collective decisions. So those 10 or 12 members of the board who do have a seat at the table all work together to achieve the best outcomes for the school. And then having the ability to draw on your own professional knowledge and connections, again, extremely valuable to schools. As engineers, being part of a governing board provides you the opportunity to address and level up some of the issues that are specifically around STEM engagement in school. As I said earlier, there are several thousand vacancies across England, and professional associations and member networks like the IMechE play a very important role in extending our reach into the regions, and especially so in more rural and coastal areas where schools often have multiple vacancies on their boards to fill. Next slide, please. As Dom mentioned, our delivery partner, the National Governance Association, they conduct an annual survey of their members. And this slide demonstrates the most widely used words that 6,500 of their member respondents use to describe being a school governor. I'm sure you're going to see the words challenging, demanding, frustrating, all jumping off the screen at you, but they're matched equally with satisfying, rewarding, inspiring, and worthwhile. And one thing that governance most certainly isn't is boring. Next slide, and over to Dom.
Thanks, Natalie. And there are some real benefits to you as individuals and benefits to your employers. So the survey we do of governors that we place every year, 95% are enjoying their role and 97% of them would recommend becoming a governor to a friend. And we also know that from National Governance Association research, people report, over 3/4 report that they're developing board level skills and skills in different contexts. Education employers, at the start of the year, we launched a report on the value of volunteering. And that was a look at educational volunteering and the gains that can be received from it. And there were 4 gains, really. One, personal skill development. And there was a huge number of the 1,000 that we surveyed reporting personal skill gains in terms of communication, influencing, persuading skills. There were benefits for your employer. So the survey sample reported benefits to motivation in work and benefits to productivity in work. There were benefits for schools, obviously, in terms of them receiving the value of your kind volunteering. And there were benefits for personal health and well-being in terms of people feeling connected and feeling part of a larger purpose rather than just their individual role. So there's a great set of gains, both personal and professional, both to you and your employer, of people volunteering as governors. And you've got a quote there about from volunteer expressing how important it is to them in terms of being part of their community and learning more about schools. From a personal point of view, next slide please, Natalie. I know Alex and Malcolm will talk through their own experiences of being engineers who govern, but I've been a governor in multiple contexts for probably about 15 years now. I'm now a parent governor at my daughter's school, but my first governorship was at an inner city primary school in the middle of Nottingham, and really you develop the skills to help a school through a number of challenges that it faces. So some of the skills that I learned in my first governorship was how do you communicate and tailor your messages to what was a 95% school population from mainly the Pakistani community, but from a multi-ethnic community, dealing with an Ofsted inspection, dealing with the head leaving and ensuring staff were okay and appointing another head, and dealing with a local authority for school closure due to surplus places and working to land all staff in the best way that you can in terms of change. My second experience of governorship was at my old teaching practice school. I watched a regional news programme and I saw a colleague from my teacher training year literally in tears standing outside a burnt down geography block with all her coursework ruined. And when they came to the organisation I was working for at the time for governors, I felt that I had to go and support. But I learned an incredible amount personally and professionally through that experience, taking a school that was in special measures, local authority, working with the community and parents to take them into a multi-academy trust, which was absolutely right for that school at that time, dealing with the issues around budget and falling numbers on roll, dealing with comms and marketing issues, supporting that cultural migration to a MAT and recruiting 2 or 3 head teachers in that period, and landing it in a much, much better place where it's getting support across a group of schools in a MAT and has had 2 successive Ofsted good judgments and results have improved. And the sense of altruism that you get from supporting that journey along with the skill development part of the journey is very hard to put words on. I know Malcolm and Alex will do justice to that. Next slide, Natalie, and back to Lynn.
Yes, so as we've alluded to, the National Governance Association being our delivery partner, they do provide a great deal of certified training and support for all volunteers who are appointed to a governing board through Inspiring Governance. So the one thing that I would say before I run through this is you need to make sure when you register that you do tick the box that says free support. And that's when you go through the initial registration process on the Inspiring Governance portal, where there is a link to that on the IMechE website. So you will receive a hard complimentary copy of Welcome to Governance, or if you join a multi-academy trust, you'll get Welcome to a multi-academy trust. There's a difference in the 2 publications. They have an e-newsletter which features the latest education news and policy updates, as well as a monthly hot topics email which is designed specifically for new governors and trustees. And then they have access to over 50 e-learning modules as part of their learning link, which includes in-depth induction modules, but also bite-size modules, which could be specific to certain topics within the curriculum, like safeguarding, or if you're appointing a new head teacher, etc. And then if you're fortunate enough to be in the age 18 to 40 bracket, you can have membership of their Young Governors Network. Next slide, please. And then finally, just to give you a broader overview of the charity-wide work that we do, alongside Inspiring Governance is the Inspiring Further Education Governance programme, of which we also deliver. So if you do have a particular interest in the FE sector, there are opportunities which you can also sign up to. Our other volunteering programmes are Inspiring the Future and Primary Futures, and are what we call one-off interactions. Again, you can find more information about those on our website. And then do check out our extensive research on the Education Employers main website, where you'll find a link to that value volunteering report, amongst other research building on the evidence base of what happens when employers engage with schools to support young people's learning and progression into the world of work, along with details of our international work as well. So that concludes our presentation. Thank you for your time, and I will hand you back to Yelena at this point. Thank you.
Hi, I'm not sure if Jelena is still there, but if not, we can move on to Malcolm and Alex.
Right. So as the benefit of this session is primarily to be able to ask and for us to answer any questions that you have, I'll keep this relatively short and more of a biography of my route to becoming a governor, so that we leave time for the questions. I'm a mechanical engineer. I work very much full-time managing my own company, and I work in high-risk industries such as nuclear and oil and gas. As a technical consultant, I cover a multitude of disciplines, ranging from design and fitness for service, looking at function, throughput and reliability, as well as forensic investigation and root cause analysis. I do consultancy on safety and legislative compliance, as well as risk-based asset management. In addition to my work role, I'm actively involved in the IMechE. I've been involved in the regional and area committees for many years, organising events, acting as the regional head previously, and I'm currently the regional education officer. I also operate at the national committee level, where I'm currently chair of the Continuous Professional Development Committee and member of the Qualifications and Membership Board. As well as that, I'm involved with Oxford Brookes University as a member of their Industrial Advisory Board. And it's this mix of skills that brought me into school governance in the first instance. I'm a governor at a local comprehensive secondary school in a semi-rural market town. At the time I became involved, the school had a specialism in engineering, and as the then regional chair, it seemed important to forge that link between the school and the engineering community. During my time, the school has transitioned from being local authority controlled to having academy status. We're now a multi-academy trust, a MAT, with the secondary school and 7 satellite primary schools in the MAT. We've also got 4 additional primary schools in an educational alliance, reflecting the fact that some Church of England schools have restrictions imposed on their governance. The vision for the trust is to create a seamless education experience for local children between the ages of 4 and 18. I've been a governor for over 12 years now, both as a community governor and a parent governor. Both my daughters attended the school, and it must be said that it doesn't do an 11-year-old's much street cred much good to have their father pointed out during the Year 7 introduction to the school. But it be said, I've still not been forgiven for that. As a governor, I've been involved in various capacities, both at school and academy-wide level. The basic role is very much, as has been said, providing a reasonable layperson's view on strategic matters. There's no specific requirement for experience in teaching and learning. And the typical commitment will be around a couple of hours per term in the evenings. As you get involved with additional committees, so the amount of time that you can end up giving to the school will increase, obviously subject to your availability. And it's these subcommittees where your other life experiences become much more relevant. So in my own case, I'm involved on the finance committee, where we monitor expenditure, staff pay, and set the annual budgets. Very much drawing on my work experience, I'm on the safety and facilities committees, where we look at monitoring legislative compliance, Legionella, fire safety, chemical safety, working throughout with the senior leadership team to develop the school plans, particularly in relation to new buildings and the government condition improvement grants, the SIF grants. And with my own safety background, I'm also involved in the safety audits that we carry out around the school. Subsequently, with more experience as being a governor, I've got involved in the discipline committees or panels and safeguarding. In addition to the school infrastructure aspects, governors can have an educational role, and in my own case, I link through to the science and design technology departments, where we carry out class observations on a termly basis, and primarily to challenge the results and curriculum that we teach. If I was to sum up governorship, it's definitely rewarding, and it can also be in equal measure humbling and frustrating. As a means for continuous education, it is extremely beneficial. You learn about aspects which are not normal to your work, and yet can be relevant. It expands your work knowledge. I work with fire safety. I know about oil rigs. I know about the risks there, but have much less knowledge about conventional office space. And as a result of being involved in school fire safety assessments, I now have that additional knowledge, and it has been extremely useful in a work context. Being a governor also helps develop your own leadership and meeting chairing skills outside of the pressures of the workplace. And depending on the committees that you're involved with, it can also bring significant financial experience. Some of the budgets are really quite large. In equal measure, as I say, it can be frustrating. Setting a balanced budget can be challenging, and you're certainly having to make compromises. You know that money, if money were no object, you could do much more for pupils' life chances. And very much we're working in a make, do and mend culture. It's also challenging, depending on the role. You will hear of cases that are distressing. I obviously come from an obvious demographic, and I've just not encountered some of the aspects that you see in a comprehensive school in my normal life. Fortunately, I've not ever had to deal with anything too harrowing, and you're certainly working with the staff and leadership and support teams, and you are not on your own in this. It's very humbling. You come across instances of individual success overcoming real hardship, which is very satisfying. You work with an incredibly dedicated team of people, and in some small way, you're invited to share in the successes that they've achieved. Since being asked to do this talk, I reflected on my involvement at the school, and probably the most telling thing I can say is that pretty much every single one of my colleagues and clients knows that I'm a school governor. It's something I'm very proud of. It's something I talk about, and definitely it influences some of the decisions and provides me with relevant work experience that I bring to the workplace. So it's incredibly valuable. And with that, I will hand over to Malcolm.
Thanks, Alex. I'm Malcolm Dobell. I've been a member of the IMechE now for over 50 years, believe it or not. And for 20 of them, I've served on the Rower Division board and was its chair for a year back in 2005-06. My career was with London Underground, again on safety critical things, but this time to do with trains, signalling and track, rather than any of the things that Alex was dealing with. I think my experiences as a governor have been quite similar to Alex's, so I'm going to deviate a bit from my pure experiences and talk a little bit about some of the things that have been affecting my trust more recently. Like him, I've seen the rewards, dealing with a school which might have a £7 million a year budget, was actually less per year than a new train would have cost me in London Underground. So it was useful to see how I got value for every single pound that the school would be spending. We've moved from local authority control to individual academy, and then built a 2 secondary school multi-academy trust with the ambition of drawing into our trust the partner primary schools send their children to our secondary schools, so that we can have the 4 to 18 all through education, the same as Alex talked about. when we set up the Multi-Academy Trust, we thought that it was really important to focus on the strategy. And the strategy was one that literally was 5 dimensions. We had to get the education for the children right. That was absolute. That's what we're there for, after all. And we wouldn't do that on our own. So we would have the ambition for collaborating to ensure a truly holistic education. So the 2 schools collaborate together so that the whole is better than the sum of the individual parts. We would rise together to the rigor of academic challenge. So every child would be challenged according to that child's capability. We would share to create a positive and high-performing environment for the school. The strapline was a great place to work. And believe it or not, we've had the most incredible results from staff surveys that are done on the basis of a national survey process, which can be compared with other schools across the UK. We then tackled a couple of areas that we were less strong with, and we thought we needed to improve. And by golly, it was timely. We said we needed to create a supportive partnership with our parents, carers, and families. And we needed to craft a meaningful partnership with our wider community. We set this strategy in 2018 and worked on it to 2019 and had no idea what would befall us in 2020, having to deal with the COVID-19 crisis and remote education. But because we'd done the groundwork, it enabled us to move reasonably seamlessly into online working. And we continued to survey staff, survey students, survey parents, and been blown away by the feedback we've got, which has allowed us to continue to improve the online learning we deliver to our students and to make sure we identify the students for whom online working is not delivering what they need and find ways to help them. This has been something that's been crafted continuously between the senior team of the schools and the governing body. And I've spent a huge amount of time on it this last year myself. I have the luxury of being semi-retired, so I can spend the time on it. But it is my role as the chair of the trustees to spend a lot of time with the senior leadership team challenging them. And challenging is not in a way that is critical, it's always supportive. We're really lucky to have a talented team that are taking us onwards and upwards, even through these challenging times. One of the things we've been successful with over the last year is, again, with examining our own performance as trustees and identifying we had some vacancies to fill. And we wanted to improve our marketing and promotional skills. Even though we've done quite well, we wanted to do it even better. And we decided that we would use Inspiring Governance to try and find a suitable candidate. We also recognised that we were very white middle class and we wanted to improve our diversity if we possibly could. We were really lucky that we found a candidate from Inspiring Governance who was from the Black and ethnic minority community. He also happened to work for an organisation that is important to our local community and produced other links. He's a marketing professional and he also has experience of children who need special educational needs. So he ticked so many boxes that we were really delighted to accept him as a trustee, and he started work with us in December. Finally, I think the last thing I'd mention is you sometimes see people who say that governor's role is all about making sure that the school scores well in the league tables and becomes outstanding at Ofsted. And I'd say to you that this is a sign that they've got their priorities wrong. The critical thing for all of us is to make sure that each and every one of our young men and women leave their schools with the qualifications they need to further their ambitions and become better examples of themselves. And that's the thing I take away from being a governor. And like Alex, something I'm really, really proud of. And I know that all my contacts know that I'm proud of it, and they know that I do it. And with that, I'll hand back to Yelena. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to all of the panelists for your presentations and providing an insight. Thank you, everybody who has already submitted your questions. If anything else comes up, please do put it in the chat box. I'm going to work my way through the questions, and there are some general themes. So for a couple of them, I think we will cover 2 or 3 questions in one go, if everyone is okay with that. So the first one seems to be whether the Inspiring Governance Recruitment Service is specific only to England and whether there's a Scottish equivalent. Dominic, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, it's a very quick answer. Yeah, so our contract with the DfE is England only, and that's partly because the education systems in Scotland and Wales are devolved. So they do have governing boards in Wales. I think in Scotland they have kind of more broader administrative boards, not in this quite in the same way that our English governing boards are set up. So I don't know for sure, but I would hunt around for potential equivalents to, and perhaps ask schools in your local neighbourhood whether they would want you as a governor and what the kind of structure is in those countries. Yeah.
Thank you. I think I would just jump in there to say that promotion of this webinar did go out to our wider membership, just because governorship is such a great thing to find out about whether you use the Inspiring Governance Recruitment Service or not. And I wanted to share that experience with our membership and provide you with some more information on it. Okay, so if we move on to the next question, this is from Ewan. Is there a minimum age or experience requirement to become a governor?
I'll take this one. You just need to be 18. And I guess I could answer this one along with one of the later questions as well, in terms of the age that we're looking for. Is I mentioned earlier that there was a Young Governor Network that are part of the NGA's offer. So we are looking for young governors from the age 18 to 40, but not exclusively. So there are so many vacancies across the whole of the country that we do need governors from every region, but we are particularly keen to get diverse governance onto boards. You know, a lot of governing boards, you know, are not diverse in terms of their age, their gender, or their ethnicity. So, you know, we have the Everyone on Board campaign and various other campaigns, Educators on Board, for example, to try and bring specific cohorts of people into governance to diversify those boards.
I think, Yelena, any age and any skill set is really welcome, because I think you will have inherent skills that governing boards value, and if you haven't got the kind of skill-based stuff necessarily, our research into governance showed that chairs of governing boards wanted people who've got those kind of leadership skills, the soft skills, the communication, influence, the ability to work as a team, and all of those skill sets, in addition to some of the harder skill sets that engineers can bring around project management, data analysis, interrogation, you know, problem solving. So I think it's everybody welcome. We wouldn't want anybody to exclude themselves from what we've said today.
And I also think it's worth mentioning that you don't have to be in employment. You know, it's not a prerequisite to be in employment. You know, you can still bring, you know, your previous work skills, and also it's a good way of enhancing your CV for moving on to your next employer. So I think that's really important to know, because I think one of the questions further down was about whether you needed to be employed or not. And if you are retired, you're more than welcome as well. There's no upper age limit, just saying.
Thank you. I think you've covered. Oh,
Can
Malcolm.
I add, there's also many employers are really supportive of people going into some sort of volunteering role.
Yeah.
Certainly. So I think what we're saying is, if you're interested and you have the time, please do get involved. Don't exclude yourself because you don't necessarily meet the diversity requirements or the groups that we are particularly targeting. We are looking to get our membership involved and to give back as much as we can. I think the next question, which has also come up a couple of times, is about the support and training that's provided through the scheme for people that are already in place as governors.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. Unfortunately, the NGA support offer is linked to governors appointed through the Inspiring Governance Service. So a number of you were interested in accessing that, having been appointed already, either as a parent governor or through another medium. Unfortunately, we can't retrofit. That's not part of our contract. I would say something potentially, Elaine, if it's okay, about the time, because you mentioned time, and quite a few people have asked about the time involved in governance. And I think it's probably fair to say that if you're coming into governance for the first time, you are likely to be involved in 3 meetings across the year, 1 a term, potentially 2 a term. And there is the time needed to really read through the papers that the head teacher sends out and the school send out, to kind of interrogate those and read through those. And certainly you might want to get further involved potentially in a committee, or for example, this year I've helped the school recruit for a site manager, so a day of interviewing, and I also had a day of a learning walk, so going into school and working with the subject leads that I work with. So that's a kind of entry-level commitment. I think both Malcolm and Alex are very experienced and have worked their way through that first joining through to taking on more responsibility as their kind of life circumstances and their experience has allowed them to. And I think what I would say is, don't get daunted as first-time governors by the time commitment. Yes, it is a commitment. It's not something you can pick up and drop. You do have to create the time for it and have a sustained commitment, but it is very manageable within a professional career. And over time, you can make that judgment about whether you want to invest more time in it as your kind of career and your governance goes on.
I just add to that a lot of the time, at least initially, is outside of the normal work hours. Therefore, it is something that you can tie up with other things. Obviously, if you're starting to get involved with the curriculum elements and school departments, and you're observing the classroom, that has to be done in work time. But things like the finance committee is done at a time which is convenient to me. The rest of the committee, or the rest of the attendees on that, are staff from the finance department or the head, and they fit around me rather than the other way around.
Can I add something about training that was mentioned as well? Any governing body worth its salt will have a development governor who will support new governors and help them with their training needs, and the school will happily pay for any training courses that are required. NGA do some, but equally most local authorities worthy of the name will run training courses for new governors. There's never, in my experience, certainly in my town, never been a problem getting training for governors.
Agree with that.
Perfect. Okay, if we can move on to another question for Dominic, specifically about your experiences from Emma Hamilton. So she said that your early governance role sounded very varied and challenging. And did you find that...
You've frozen, but so I'll finish it for you. Did you find that you were going in cold on a lot of these issues?
Handle these situations, or was there a lot of...
Okay, so the question is, did you know these things were happening in the school, or were you going in cold? And did your day-to-day experience help you in your role? So to answer that, Emma, yes, it did. I mean, at the time I was working for the National College of School Leadership, which eventually became the DFE. So I did have a background in education as a teacher, and I did find that my knowledge of the overall education policy agenda helped with some of those schools that were really struggling at that point in time. But I don't think you necessarily need that kind of background in education. The great strength of governance is that you're drawing people from a range of professional backgrounds with a range of skills and experiences. And there are, for example, you will get time to understand the education world and understand that. And a lot of our surveys that we do with people that we've placed from the business world, people are really glad of the insight it's given them into the way schools are run, the challenges that head teachers deal with day to day in terms of funding and policy change, and just the day-to-day running of a school. So you will, I think, learn quite a lot from being a governor, not just in the set of management skills and the kind of skills that you'll learn, but you'll learn, I think, a lot more about schools and society from the time when you went to school.
Thank you, Dominic. I'm just aware we have quite a few questions and only 10 minutes left, so we'll try and work our way through. Let me see. So it's with regards to specific skills once again. Is there anything in particular other than willingness to commit time and effort that you think is required?
I have a few. I don't know whether anyone wants to.
I'd start with common sense.
Yeah, a willingness to challenge what you're presented with. That's the role, to look at what the school's presenting, what the school is presented with, and challenge.
I'd agree with that. The core functions of governance are oversight of the strategic direction and ethos of the school, oversight of finance and compliance, and then obviously holding to account the senior leadership team for a whole range of things, which includes behaviour, academic performance in the school. And it's a really good opportunity to understand schools, challenge, look at the data. No question is a silly question to ask. Often it's the most simple questions that actually unlock the greatest thinking of that school leadership team in terms of re-evaluating itself and how they go about improving schooling for children. So, our research has shown that, sometimes schools might want legal expertise, they might want financial expertise, but often if people bring that and they don't employ it because they're worried about professional risk or they don't have the time, schools would much rather welcome somebody who brings a good generic skill set they can work with to develop that, and who can ask challenging questions and work with the school executive to make the school better.
Case in point is we've got a doctor on the governance committee, on the governance panel, and up to now, over the past few years, she's not used any of her medical knowledge. In the last year, it's kind of come a very important ask a friend for the leadership team and for us as governors. We've got the issue now of testing in schools. There are legal and safety implications of that, and we've got someone with that knowledge on the team.
Yeah. We have a doctor. It's been incredibly helpful this year.
Yeah. We acquired a lady from the ambulance service on one school last year, and within months she's been front and centre on the governing body for that reason. But she also had the leadership skills from her work that helped us recruit a head teacher.
Great. I hope that has clarified that one, and that medical skills will always be very useful.
Same is true with engineering. I get involved in the risk assessments and the safety assessments. That's my day job.
Yeah, definitely. We have a question from Judith Packer, which is quite a specific one. So she has said that she's been accepted as governor at a local primary school, which is part of an academic trust. Does it preclude her from participating? That's the first part of the question.
I'm happy to take this one on. Sorry, but yes, it precludes her from being part of the Inspiring Governance and the package of support that's on offered. But what I would say is that a lot of the employers and the member networks that we work with, they create and develop their own governor network. So you could have sort of like an IMechE governor support network. I'm sure you've got Alex and Malcolm there who I'm sure would be happy to discuss what would be required and things, and certainly that would be something that you could look at. And there's also a number of online governor networks that you could join through LinkedIn or various other social media platforms. But unfortunately, because we're funded by the Department for Education, the funding for the support side of what we offer has to be aligned with actually appointing numbers onto boards.
Okay.
I'd also say on that, if you're in an academy trust, I assume that it will have other schools associated with it. Certainly within ours, we have the various schools. Each has its own local governing body, and as an academy trust, we come together as all of the governors to bring together. So we've got multiple finance governors who come together and discuss. We have multiple facilities and safety who come together and discuss. So there is support within the academy itself.
It's the same with us as well.
I think that she also wanted to check if there was a way of seeing if the Academy Trust is a member of the scheme.
I would essentially, if it's multi-academy trust, it's likely they'll have somebody who will lead on governance, or that the mother school, if you like, will be looking at governance across its local governing boards within that multi-academy trust. So I would definitely say, Judy, it'd be great if you could mention us to them. We'd very happily have a conversation with them to get them registered if they're not, and we can support the trust with their recruitment of governors if they so wish to use us.
I would just like to say at this point that we only have 4 minutes left, so I think that we might want to come back to the rest of the questions with emails, or I'm happy to do that afterwards if we haven't got through all of them at this point, and apologies for not doing that. I am aware this is your lunch break as well. Okay, so if we move on to Andrew Kirkham's question, how much sharing of best practice takes place across schools, and is it more than just collaboration between schools within a trust?
If I pick that one up, I mean, from our own school, we only have the one secondary school within our trust. We work both as governors and as the senior leadership team with partner schools to share best practice. The head teacher is regularly involved with other schools. Our CEO on the Academy Trust is an Ofsted inspector and is also a support head for other schools. So again, we have another route into schools to get that support. So yes, very much it's collaboration across the place.
Similar in my locality, we run a leadership and training centre as part of the Academy Trust, and we see teachers from lots of other schools. We're also a member of the Whole Education Network, which seeks to deliver best practice. And one of the things we teach to others is a thing called Magenta Principles, which basically is how to make learning fun, how to make learning effective as well. So all those things go on, and it's fair to say that teachers also build their own networks. Probably and the governors themselves often attend meetings of the National Governance Association to see what other governing bodies do.
Thank you. And I think finally, if it's not something we can probably cover quickly, but Pardeep's question, how do you select the candidate for governance roles?
We don't. The schools do that. So effectively, a school is registering their details and their vacancies, and you as a volunteer are registering, and then you can find each other on the portal. A school will select you based on what the role they're looking to fill. So they'll do a skills audit every year, and they'll know what skills they need to recruit onto the board, and that's how decisions are made. And usually it's not a terribly formal process. At the moment, it's usually a Zoom or Teams or a similar meeting with the chair and the head teacher.
Okay, thank you, Lynn, and thank you for being so quick. Thank you, everybody, for taking part. Thank you to our panelists for attending today. We all hope that you found this useful. I'm sorry we've run out of time and haven't answered all your questions. I will endeavour to come back to you with the answers. As mentioned at the beginning, if any of you missed it, a recording of the webinar will be sent to all registrants, and a recording will be put on the IMechE Inspiring Governance webpage. So please do share further afield. Come back to review the information. If you would like a copy of the slides, please let me know. And thank you very much for your time. I hope you have a lovely day.
Thanks, Elena. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
IMechE have been great. Thank you for that.